Hello friends, welcome back. In this video, I will be sharing with you various details about everything that we've learned about roofing, some cost-cutting tips, and then how to avoid some common scam that you would face from artisans and from roofing providers when you get to the roofing of your building. So stay tuned, and I hope that we are able to segment this so that you are able to go straight to exactly the section that you want. In the previous video, we shared with you the full cost breakdown of finishing a building after you've put up the structure. So I encourage anyone to go and watch that just to get high level idea of how each of the parts of the building, whether it is the plastering, the roofing, the windows, the septic tank. And so I'll spend some time to go over the details for each of those components, and today we are starting with roofing. So to start off, there are a few things that we have to consider before roofing. The popular types of roofing that you may encounter have to choose would be either metal roofing or asphalt shingle style roofing or clay style, or even sometimes people do concrete roofing. And as we've also known, traditionally, especially in our villages, you would see the thatch roofing and slate roofing. So there are all these types of roofing. I think the most common one we typically use are the metal roofing. Typically what you are offered when you ask a metal roofing sheet company to give you a quote would be the alu zinc and aluminium sheets. Alu zinc is quite popular for the affordability. It seems to be more affordable than the pure aluminium. And then they're also durable and resistant to corrosion, rust, and so on. And some of them can actually even be stone coated to mimic traditional tiles and all. So, and the stone coated ones, I think people call them Euro tiles in Ghana. And then there is the aluminium sheets. Aluminium sheets, I think one of the common characteristics of them are they are lightweight, but they're also extremely resistant to rust, and they are quite easy to install and energy efficient. And we chose the aluminium roofing sheets because of the expected lifespan of that. Seems you can actually choose alu zinc or aluminium, but when it comes to rust resistance, it is 100% known that aluminium cannot rust. So that was one of the major factors. And as you know, this building is in Accra, and in Accra, I think when you move 21 kilometers in most directions, you would actually meet the sea. So I just decided that, hey, let's choose this for the long term. One of the advantages, but also may turn out to be disadvantage of aluminium, is that it's quite lightweight. So let's say if you have long span windows, you're going to have a hard time transporting that. They may have to divide that into two so that it overlaps and so on and so forth. So unless you have a very good company that has proper trailers that are able to use to transport your aluminium sheets, and then also care has to be taken when it's getting installed. But ultimately, we chose aluminium roofing sheets. Now, the material you choose would contribute to the cost, so just take note of that. Alu zinc I found was a little cheaper, and I think it's also a very good option, especially if you are not close to the coast. There are other roofing types like the zinc and steel or the corrugated metal sheets, which are common due to their affordability. So you can look into those if you want, but I think the ones that have a good balance of durability and resistance to corrosion and are able to stand the test of time are these two: aluminium, pure aluminium, and alu zinc. I will not touch the other types roofing based on materials because I don't have very good experience in them, but know that we have all of them as I've mentioned earlier on. there are also the roofing styles. Besides the materials that are used, there is also the roofing style to consider. There is the gable roof. They are quite affordable and easy to build. And there is the hip roof. I learned that the right word is hip, not heap. But essentially, this style of building has your sheets sloping gently downwards to the walls. And it is known for being quite well suited for high wind areas and so on and so forth. People also like it for the aesthetics, especially if they stone coat or do other things with it. And then there is the flat roof, which is often referred to as the hidden roof. And the key difference is that flat roof may show some of the edges, but hidden roof is entirely hidden. Now, we are told, or we were told, and people tend to say that it's less expensive, but I beg to differ. I think it may end up being more expensive than your hip roof or the other roofing types if you don't take care right from the design all the way through to certain choices that are made. It may actually end up being more expensive, so you have to pay attention to all of that. And maybe so far this is an overview of the roofing types that we have in Ghana. Now let's go on to some cost cutting tips. Very first thing to consider is your roof type. We chose the hidden roof, but then it's opened at the back, so you can actually call it a flat roof. Yeah, and we didn't choose this from the beginning, but we ended up going with that. And the idea was that if you have it flowing all the way to the back, then that's one less rain gutter to worry about, right? So there are a lot of things to consider about the hidden roof, because without that, it would actually make it more expensive than the hip roof, even though it's been touted as a cheaper option. So, for example, if you have rain gutters all around your hidden roof, that means that you are going to have concrete around that. That concrete slab is a cost that you may not have thought of. Now, on top of the concrete slab, you will need to do some coping in order to ensure that it is resilient or resistant to water, but also aesthetically pleasing. That's an additional cost of going with a hidden roof. And then on top of that, you have to do waterproofing, whether it's a combination of tiles and bitumen and other things. All of that also contribute to the cost of your hidden roof. And now, in order to make your hidden roof truly hidden, what you do is you are going to raise some extra blocks up above the normal lintel of your structure in order for it to slope from one side to the next, especially if it's a long roof. That also contributes to your hidden roof. So all of these costs, when you put them together, it may end up that your hidden roof is actually more expensive than a hip roof, right? And mind you, the reason why hip roof is more or is said to be more expensive because you use more wood and you have to use more roofing sheet to cover all of that. But don't forget, for the hidden roof, you are still going to use wood, a lot of wood, not as much. You are still going to use lots of roofing sheets, again, not as much. But when you add all those other costs to it, you may end up having the same or even higher cost. So you have to consider all of that. But then again, the main tip here is that consider your roofing type as much as possible. If it's a hidden roof, try to reduce the number of rain gutters you have. Maybe have your roofing sheets flow all the way in one direction, which is why during the architectural drawing phase, it's probably easier to decide that, because then you are able to know where your poly tank would be and other things would be, and that will be one big area to ensure that you don't incur a lot of costs later on. The other way to ensure that you are getting the right costs or the right price for your roofing is to compare different quotations and costs from different manufacturers and companies. Now, there are well-established companies that you could go to if you had all the funds, but even with them, it's important to compare the cost amongst them, and sometimes the difference might be in the roofing sheet, the installation, and other things. And so one provider gave us a quotation of around 51,000 Ghana cedis, which is roughly $5,000. I'll put the right value on the screen. Another provider was also quoting us something around 60,800, almost 61,000. Again, I'll put the dollar conversion on the screen. And these were just for the roofing sheets themselves, and we were going for pure aluminium roofing sheets. The size of the roofing area was roughly around 164 square meters, so keep that in mind if you are doing your own comparison. And this is for a hidden roof. So the third provider, which is what we went for, gave us a combined cost of the roofing sheet, which is pure aluminium, 0.5 mm, and installation and transportation of around 43,000 cedis, 600, which took us to around $3,100 at the time of installation. They also provided wood service, and as in the woodworks and all, and then that was a combined cost of 42,000 cedis and 800. The workmanship was 8,500 Ghana cedis, and then the actual wood that was provided was 33,000 cedis. So in total it was this amount, 42,800, and you see the conversion. The reason why again we went for them is because we thought we had a total service. So I am not going to necessarily mention their name and recommend them because I had a few reservations around the behavior of their artisans, and I just don't want to be the one that recommends them because of my issues I had with their artisans. And the problem is that if you are working as a company and you work with artisans, they have a way of affecting or influencing your integrity. So hey, business owners out there, builders out there, if you are working with artisans, don't just hand off work to them and then expect that they will do the right thing. You have to supervise them because what they do can hurt your reputation. So keep that in mind when you are hiring artisans. Right, so the other thing that may influence the cost of your roofing is the woodwork, particularly the wood type that is used. And we chose to use Dahoma, known to be durable, long lasting, and it was on the expensive side, but I think in the long run we are going to benefit from that. Otherwise, the next higher quality option would have been to use aluminium trusses, but that would have served to be slightly more expensive for what we wanted to do, so we went for this type. So that definitely plays a role in the overall cost. Another tip, this is not really a cost cutting tip, but it's more of a roofing tip, is that when roofing in an airy area, maybe make sure that the areas for passage of air, if you haven't set up your windows, are blocked, because free flowing of air through beneath your roofing for a long time would just cause a lot of disturbance of the roofing and maybe even weaken some of it. Final thing I'd like to share in this video is avoid getting scammed. It's really just disheartening. So the first scam avoidance tip I'll give is on the wood type or the type of wood that is used for your wood trusses. That's if you are going with wood trusses. You are going to choose or have to choose a particular wood type, and typically the recommendation is to go for high quality ones like Dahoma. The challenge is if you are presented with different wood types, you are not going to be able to know and distinguish between the type that you actually chose, which is purported to be quality, and then other types which are not at the same level of quality. So what do you do in this situation? I think the best way to go about it is to go with a trusted expert. Normally it can be a very experienced roofing carpenter or an experienced builder. Ensure that they are able to check everything that is given to you to ensure you are getting the right quality of wood that you paid for. Now sometimes they would mix it up as well. So you are going to be shown, the one that you asked for, but they will mix it with other things and give you all kinds of stories. So you have to be mindful of this. Make sure that what is delivered on site is exactly what you asked for. Now, the next scam avoidance tip is concerning the roofing sheets, particularly those who choose the aluminium roofing sheets. The thing is, again, if you are presented with aluminium versus alu-zinc, pure aluminium versus alu-zinc, you may not necessarily be able to distinguish between the two. But there are a few important characteristics of these metals which might help you to distinguish between the two. The thing about aluminium is that it never gets attracted to magnets. So you want to be able to have some magnet around and be able to test all the roofing that is delivered on site, or have someone do that to ensure that it has the right material if you chose aluminium. In my case, that actually happened. Ensure that you've checked that. It's not too late if you already have your roofing there and you know you chose aluminium. You can go test it out and make sure that you hold your builder or your roofing provider accountable. The other thing in relation to your roofing sheet is the thickness. You typically would get quoted different thickness. 0.5 is what I actually recommend for pure aluminium, and you may also be able to get that for your alu-zinc, but also in 4.5. The challenge is that you not actually know the difference as in terms of thickness, because it's so thin that you can't actually tell the difference between pure aluminium 0.5 mm and then 0.45 mm. But one thing you can do if you just want to confirm yourself or to help avoid getting scammed and being given a lower or a thinner sheet is to get sample on the day of consulting with these providers. So if you get a particular sample, you know how it looks like, you know the thickness, and you are able to compare it when they deliver your actual bought roofing, right? And typically what will happen is if you go to an office to get a sample and you are quizzing them, they are going to definitely, in all likelihood, give you the right sample for you to examine at the right size. And now, when on the day of delivery you are given a different one, then you know that you have been scammed. It's a personal tip for everyone to work with integrity. Proverbs chapter 10 verse 9, Bible says, "He who walks in integrity walks securely, but he who perverts his ways will always be found out." In upcoming videos, I'll be sharing certain details about the other major cost drivers for finishing, like the septic tank, like the windows and other things, and give you all the important tips for cutting costs, avoiding scam, and getting the most out of your money. So stay tuned. subscribe. Until